Chapter 15. Stages of Baba's personality. Baba's direction to his biographer is that he should be a humble chronicler of ascertained facts. But the demand of the modern scientifically trained reader of a biography is that there should be a scientific presentation of even saints' lives, showing the how and why of each part, and how the parts fit into or grow out of each other. It may be difficult to reconcile these two. Still, we are bound to attempt in this book, the via media presenting as much as possible of Baba's life in as scientific a way as possible, without sacrificing the inspiring effect of saintly biography or its truth. The predominant interest must be to note all the words and sayings and deeds and moods that indicate or prove the saintliness and form the superhuman or divine features of the life. The subordinate interest is to note if a scientific presentation of progress or development is possible of these parts of the sacred life, especially when such presentation may explain, sustain, or add charm to the holiness or saintliness. The idea of development of personality is very widely accepted, and in the case of so many human lives, even of saints, development is studied and noted. For development, after all, is mostly treated on the ethical plane, and therefore there is ample material for study. And though the ground is hard, still useful work can be done. But yet, to many, tracing the development or growth of the divine element in Baba looks almost hopeless, as the inner life is hidden, and there is very little information available about the earlier stages of his life. Personality is easily understood and dealt with in modern psychological and philosophical treatises by following the behaviorist plan. Take a personality as it is presented by each person and try to express what it is, the sum total of the various facets and portions that make up the man's personality as understood by himself and by his neighbors. That gives the current opinion of the man's personality. This is mainly an external method. The internal is only to be inferred and cannot be easily got at. It is hard for a man even to observe the internal kernel of his own line of thought and action, and what is observed or felt is often found to be inexpressible. A good and full study of personality requires Baba's divine power of getting into and reading the heart of another, getting into his soul, as you might say. Hence, that cannot be expected here, so we are left almost wholly where the behaviorist leaves us. But even so, there is something to present, and with the help of observations made by Sai Baba and other saints and rishis, we may try to present some sketch of the development of spiritual personality. After all, the development of spiritual personality must run on the lines prescribed for God realization, or for reaching Brahman set out in textbooks like the Viveka Chudamani, or the Bhakti Shastras, namely the Bhagavata. We shall see now, taking the Bhagavata and the Brahma Sutras and the Viveka Chudamani as our guide, what steps were being adopted by Sri Sai Baba from the earliest times and how he progressed. That is an extremely interesting study, the materials for which, however, are equally extremely scanty. It is agreed practically by all that divinity is reached only by aloofness from the world's attractions, that asanga or non-attachment and vairagya or dispassion must be at the base of any course which leads to divinity, And secondly, contact with those who are in the light is necessary to kindle the torch within us, to perceive the light within. Hence, the study of such contact is the next course. Taking up the first course, in Baba's case, Vairagya seems to have been centuries old and almost hereditary, if not in the physiologist and psychological sense, at least in the spiritual sense. Baba, in his previous births, the Janmas, as reported by himself in his occasional references to his past births, was full of Vairagya, true dispassion and non-attachment, through self-denial, and was working for the benefit of others and had conquered all his desires. Baba always sacrificed his own interest to promote that of other people, a brother, a stepmother, a neighbor. In all these cases, he acted without any expectation of reward and purely out of regard or compassion for them. So the readiness to work for others' good, not caring for one's own pleasures or benefits, and its presumable basis, the perception of the real nature of oneself as above the material body and its animal urges, were the leading features of his past lives. And these must have been so deeply ingrained in his soul that from his very birth, Baba must have had these elements at least potentially within him, which later got the chance of fuller growth and fruition. The Bhagavad Gita states, "The man not completing his yoga sadhanas in a particular birth is reborn in a yogi's or other suitable family and resumes the tendencies and aptitudes developed in the former birth. He is swayed unwittingly by the force of his former tendencies." Providence gave Baba the best stepping stones in the 19th century life also. Desertion by parents at a very early age and being brought up by a begging fakur who appears to have been a highly advanced Sufi, and the fairly rapid death of both the original parents and the fakur and his wife, after arranging to leave him in the care of the zamindar as an absolutely helpless dependent, having no claims whatever and no pretension whatever, are all stepping stones. These are obviously the very best plot and manure for faith, truth, trust, purity, non-attachment, and godliness. That is, aloofness from the world and love of God, which enables them to grow and develop and come to fruition. Bhakti is the best field or manure. Even for a jnani, it is highly important. As it states in the ancient scriptures, Bhakti Marga in the form of Guru Bhakti Marga was the whole course or soul sadhana of Baba's life. He fed on bhakti and that alone, and by means of that alone became all that he was. For bhakti, which transformed itself into jnana, his absolute dependence served a very good purpose. As a child, he must have been fondly loved by the fakur and his wife, and as a slightly grown-up child or boy, he was loved and brought up by the zamindar, Gopal Rao Desmukh, or Venkatesa. Here, therefore, we find the elements that make up a saint: absolute dependence or the fullest trust in the fakur and in a master, begetting no hatred, but trust and deepest love, a love into which adverse elements like jealousy and envy and hatred could not enter. The scriptures declare that the qualification of a disciple is that he should be free from pride, jealousy, and sense of possession. A child absolutely dependent upon the foster father and mother or the chieftain and getting everything needed through love is bound to be totally free from such defects. These negative virtues are mere trifles. Positive strength of love ensures the presence of the negative virtues and a great deal more. It is not a mere negation that can build up divinity. It is love that can do it. God is love. As Sir Walter Scott says, heaven is love and love is heaven. Not merely in the enjoyment of it, for it is so happy to be loved, but also in the ultimate philosophical analysis and its result. On examination of the nature of divinity, Sat-Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss, it is love bliss, and its fullest expression is the perfect saint in the flesh, who ultimately, after Mahasamadhi, is recognized as nothing but Prem Rupi, or God. This positive development of love can hardly be traced stage after stage. The course of true love never runs smooth. However, in Baba's life, hindrances came. These may be studied. Usually we find ill treatment and unkindness would interfere with love. But in Baba's case, he met with every one of these. As a protege of the Zamindar, he had envious opponents hurling brickbats at him with a view to kill him. But what was the response of this loving soul? Not the slightest impulse to revenge or hatred. On the other hand, he revived the villain who stone-hit his master and who, according to ordinary notions and feelings, would be reckoned as a mortal enemy. Enmity had no place in Baba's soul. His soul was nothing but fullness of love, a love that neutralizes and chills the fire of enmity hurled at it. Love that serves non-attachment and discrimination. He pardoned all and proceeded onwards in his own march of love, not minding opposite currents. Again, when he came to Shirdi, mischievous boys pelted stones at Baba. Did he revenge himself on them? No. Hatred and desire for revenge were not within him. On the other hand, he recognized that even those who were molesting his body were really his father's children, and therefore objects of love for him. He forgave them readily, and into the tiny hands that hurled stones at him, he placed sugar candy, and the boys and children were wondering what sort of creature this fakur was, who returned sugar candy for stone pelting. They found mango trees gave fruit for pelting, but no men acted like those trees. They had not seen such dispassion and discrimination and other noble qualities before. Again, when the shopkeepers were having their laugh at him for being a crazy fellow whom they wished to see depressed or deeply dejected for want of light, as they had refused oil for his oil lamps, what did Baba do after converting water into oil? And when they were down on their knees praying for forgiveness and praying also that he should not curse them? Baba's nature was never for cursing. What does a mother do when her angry infant puts its hands into dirt and flings the dirt at the mother's face? She quietly chides the child, washes its hands, and advises it to behave better in the future. Baba's loving heart was the mother's heart. These shopkeepers were the erring children, and with his divine loving heart, Baba behaved just like a mother. He gave them good advice, warning them against the evils of falsehood and rejoicing in others' sorrow. He reprobated such conduct and took promises that such bad conduct would not be repeated, just like a loving mother. The reasons for his conduct on the above and other similar occasions were seldom avowed or expressed by Baba, but they can be inferred from the attendant circumstances and from the analysis of similar mental states found in the books he frequently recommended for his devotees, or basic spiritual study and endeavor. The Eknath Bhagavat, the Skanda, when recommending its earnest study to H.S. Dixit, in which he declared to another devotee constituted his own teachings as Krishna to the Uddhava, and as Sai Baba to the Kali Yuga, throws considerable light on the basis for his forgiveness and avoidance of anger or hatred. Hence, we may proceed to examine the reasons given to that holy text as the basis of such forgiveness and avoidance of hatred through Baba did not state his reasons. What is the effect of love upon the various thoughts and feelings, desires, aversions, capacities and incapacities, and the tendencies or impulses found to be the main features of various personalities? Self-love and self-assertion, resisting and overcoming the efforts of other selves adversely disposed, are basic urges for ensuring the safe maintenance and progress of the physical, psychical organism in the ordinary individual. But altruism or care for others, even adverse individuals to the detriment of one's own material interests, but in promotion of one's higher or nobler side, is often found. It may be weak in many, but in the saint it gets quickly developed and overshadows or overpowers the earlier self-love and self-assertion of the brute or lower level. This altruism and active care for others form the important facets of love. Love grows stronger by exercise, by non-attachment, and by constant altruism one becomes interested in the welfare of all creatures, and all creatures get to be identified with oneself. Thus love unifies, synthesizes, and strengthens one's self or moral nature, especially by the perception of unity of oneself with others. As it states, becoming the self of all creatures, one becomes love. And also the perfect yogi feels the joys and sorrows of other men and creatures as his own, and treats them as himself. His identification with others is so perfect. And this perfection is wrought by love. It can stand the rough test of violent and cruel conduct of others towards oneself.